Can you separate the person from the goods? Let's ask our panel this again, Rabbi Shochet and Manika. Welcome. Let me start with, I'm going to start with Manika. And as I said, happy Diwali. What are your thoughts on this, Manika?
Thank you for wishing me happy Diwali, and happy Diwali to everyone who's out there celebrating. I guess my perspective is that spiritual people, or people who take the time to meditate and practice mindfulness, I think it's easier for those people to separate the act from the individual, or, as you said in this case, the art from the artist. When you're looking at a broader scale of celebrities, I think you get riled up by everybody jumping on board with their opinion. But if you just strip it back and go down to the basic level, when you're dealing with your partner or someone close to you doing something or spewing hatred, you actually take the time to understand it, because you know that at the core, that individual is probably a very kind or good person, which is why they're in your life. And instead of judging them or condemning them for the act, you try to understand, what is it that's driving that act? Where is that coming from, that anger or hatred? And help them be able to shift and heal. And I think if you do choose a spiritual path in life, then focusing on helping yourself and others heal should be a priority, if possible.
Well, what if it's somebody in a very high position who their words, like I'm going DEFCON on Jewish people, can incite a lot of hatred? They may have said those words, they may say sorry, they may be understood by their loved one. Meanwhile, people are saying, well, this famous person said, has given me permission to do this, that, and the other. What if their journey into this maybe misunderstood what they say creates a lot of pain for a lot of people? Can you still separate the two?
So, it is very complicated, but if that famous person also got on a camera and said, I think all of you should go jump off a building, are those people going to run off and jump off that building? Most likely not. So if that person says something negative about a group of people and that resonates with you and you want to use that as an excuse to go and hurt other people, it was already inside of you. It wasn't that person that made you go and do that. Just like they can't make you jump off a building or set yourself on fire. It's very easy to blame our darkness on other people, instead of actually focusing and looking inward at our darkness and trying to clean that inner pollution. And on the other hand, if someone is spewing hate, and we hate them in turn for spewing hate, are we not then adding to that negativity and the hatred and that vibration of hate into the world, into the universe? Are we not responsible for energy we also put out into the universe? So instead of allowing somebody's negativity into our vessel, which is this human body, and bringing that into us, maybe we could take the time to think about, well, when that person says this, it makes me feel this way, that I carry this negativity. So what is it about me that resonates with that? And focusing on our negativity and dissipating that.
Yeah. All right, so Rabbi Shochet, how do you feel about this?
Let me cut to the chase, Trisha. Kanye West is an anti-Semite. There's no two ways to cut it. And carrying that label in an almost universal and somewhat unanimous capacity in the 21st century is quite a damning thing. So for me as a Jew, to listen to his music, for argument's sake, or wear the fashion clothing that he is promoting, or any kind of anti-Semite might be promoting, would be disingenuous at the least. Why would I want to be lending support to such despicability? That said, were you to wear his clothing or listen to his music, it would be equally disingenuous for me to condemn you or misconstrue that as your support for him or his views. You like the song, you like the clothing. You're not necessarily wearing it because you like him. Someone who wears Yves Saint Laurent probably doesn't even know if that's a man or a woman, let alone their life philosophies or points of view. However, that's all on the individual, if you will, or personal capacity and perspective. It all changes when it's corporate endorsement, as the fashion houses themselves. So long as they're seen using an individual known for his anti-Semitic or racist doctrines to promote their own brand, they are undeniably guilty by association, because the message they're putting out there is that these sort of statements or sentiments are okay. And if, for example, Adidas is going to pursue the Yeezy Boosts as planned, then shame on them. I'll happily chuck my Adidas sneakers. That's not adding negativity into the world. It's stamping out anti-Semitism, full stop.
Different views. I mean, coming back to you, Manika, what if he had said, for instance, I'm going DEFCON on all Sikhs, for instance? Would you still be able to, and you knew that you're, maybe... and I absolutely hear and I agree with you. My mother always used to say, if someone told you to jump off a cliff, would you do it? But the sad reality is and the other week we did false prophets, and we were looking at how much power these pop stars and people, influencers have. But if he'd said something as horrible as I'm going DEFCON and all Sikh people, and as a result of that, there are those sheep who would jump off a cliff, who then, even maybe they have it within themselves, but they are emboldened. I think that's the word. A lot of people would shut up about it or deal with it quietly. But when somebody in that position comes out and says that, think, oh, that's all right to think that. Would you still be able to separate him from his remarks? Would you still be able to say, well, okay, but I'm still going to buy something from his fashion line if that's what you wanted to do?
I mean, the Sikhs have actually faced a lot of persecution from 1984 onwards. So it's something that my grandparents have gone through, having to flee India and move out of India. I think every group, every religious group, and even people of different sexual orientation, or even women, have had to face issues like this of being attacked just for being who you are. And yet it continues to happen and nothing changes. And we live in this cycle, and it's been going on from the beginning of time, and it continues to go on. So unless we change at the core of our being, the world is not going to change. So yes, we can stand up today and say something about women's rights, and we can stand up tomorrow and speak up for people who are gay. We can speak up for different religious groups, which we should do. And we do. I, in fact, do all the time on my social media and constantly get blocked or have down. But at the end of the day, for centuries, absolutely nothing has changed. And why does it keep getting worse? And for me, I feel it's more important to understand that. What is wrong? What is going wrong at the core? And try to change from that place. And I think that if we can all work on raising our energy, changing our thought patterns, having a healthier mindset, that will ultimately impact the world. And it may just be small groups at a time, shifting into a place of compassion and going through life with a compassionate heart that will have a ripple effect around the entire world.
All of that makes perfect sense, and all of that is quite meaningful. And of course, we want to change the world, and we start by changing ourselves. But no one's going to argue that you should go out and give Hitler a hug or Stalin a hug or whomever else a hug. And somehow if you embrace them, they're going to change their points of view, and there's going to be peace in the world. When there's hatred, when there's racism, it has to be called out for what it is. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the various vibes, energies, and changes that I will agree with you we must certainly make. The two are mutually exclusive. There's one aspect of what you want to do in terms of creating better peace in the world, and that's wonderful, but that doesn't change the fact that hatred has to be stamped out at source, loud, blatantly, unconditionally.
So when somebody
do you feel though, Rabbi? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, do you feel, though, Rabbi Shochet, if somebody says, and it's often used, and as I said, it does give mental health a bad name, if they come up, if there is an excuse, and Kanye West hasn't himself said that this is his issue, other people have said that, oh, you must be saying this because you have mental illness, or in John Galliano's case, he had an alcohol addiction or what have you, and Coco Chanel didn't have any kind of answer. Do you think that if there is an underlying issue and what have you, does that, I'm not going to say excuse, but does that go any way of explaining what they say, or he said what he said, end of?
And when Mel Gibson was stone drunk when he launched into his anti-Semitic diatribes as well, that might, to all intent and purposes, make one a little bit more forgiving towards the individual. But the reality is all it's doing is exposing what's really at the core and the sentiments that that particular person harbors. And again, if they are a high-profile individual, they are actually beating the drum and summoning all the other lunatics out there to jump on the bandwagon and perpetuate further racism and further hatred.
Hard times, those times I always see when you feel you're kind of drowning in something and you reach for your faith. How has it managed to support you, sustain you, or help you? This time I'm going to start with Rabbi Shochet.
I'm reminded of a grandfather who soon after the war, the Holocaust, was approached by his grandson, and he said, I feel as though there are two wolves fighting in my heart. One is full of anger and rage and helplessness, and the other is full of compassion and strength and faith. And the grandson said, Grandpa, which wolf is going to win that fight in your heart? And he answered, whichever one I choose to feed. And the point is, in this context, that when we hold on to faith, we're able to feed into hopefulness, we're able to feed into a more positive perspective and approach to whatever it is that we encounter in life. If you believe that God got you to it, then you will also believe that God will in fact get you through it. I mean, it's perfectly natural and normal to despair in the face of whatever struggles that one might endure, and no one frankly can blame you. But in the bigger scheme of things, that's only going to compound the problem. If life is essentially just a roll of the dice, then you're just left wringing your hands in despair, wallowing in self-pity over what happened. If you believe that there is a master plan, then ultimately you will be able to dig deep and know that there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, thank you. And Manika, for you?
So in Sikhism, we are taught that this world is an illusion. And while you're here for the human experience, you're also here to transcend it. And so we're given tools on how to transcend it and connect to our inner divine self. And one of those very important tools is meditation and mindfulness. And I think most people understand the spiritual and health benefits of meditation and mindfulness. But recently there was a study done by Harvard University which was on meditation and mindfulness, and it was carried out by a neuroscientist named Sarah Lazar. And the study sought to explore the benefits of meditation and mindfulness via brain scans. And there were three findings that really stood out to me. One was that participants who began meditating, regardless of age, showed an increase in the gray matter of the prefrontal cortex, which is the decision-making part of the brain. The second is that the brain of new meditators thickened after 8 weeks in the areas of the brain that cater to self-relevance, learning, cognitive memory, emotional regulation, which is very important in today's world, adapting perspectives, which is what helps us to understand other people, empathy, compassion, and the production of regulatory neurotransmitters. And the third, which I thought was also quite profound, is that the areas of the brain of new meditators that were related to anxiety, fear, and stress became smaller over time. And these are physical findings which are undeniably profound, and they're medically backed. So meditation actually improves our brain function, and a healthier brain leads to healthier thoughts and actions, and overall towards our impact on a healthier society. So I always go back to the inner core and look at that inner pollution and how I can better that, because that's the true impact that I feel I can have on those who surround me. and then my wider circle. And I feel like it's a ripple effect, and it carries on from that point onwards. So I think meditation is to be taught at schools.
Meditation would be your key. Rabbi Shraga, so would you, if you're going through a particularly difficult time, would you pray on it? Or, you know, is that the way you would feed the relevant wolf, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, prayer is a fundamental component of religion in general. Again, it's acknowledging the reality that there is somebody there to talk to. People have questions that gnaw away at them when they endure whatever turmoil. And there's a balance between knowing that you have to sometimes live with the questions, that not everything is ultimately answerable, at least on the human comprehension level. There's an element of meditation, absolutely so, because I would have to talk to myself, have a conversation in my own head to come to better understand and appreciate that I need not despair, that ultimately this is part of a bigger plan, that in as much as God deals the cards, I choose how to play the hand.
That's a good way of putting it as well. And Manika, with you, if you're in a really, really difficult situation, things are really tough, is it then that you would say, well, I need to meditate on it? Or is meditation just part of your life? And when you kind of do I don't know, an audit, if you like, you know, I'm guessing, like, you know, with prayer, you might say, you know, thank you for this, thank you for that, and this is the issue I've got, you know, on board today. Or would you specifically, you know, God, I'm going through a really awful time, I need to meditate on it? How does it work?
For me, meditation is a daily practice because, again, part of being Sikh, one of the fundamental followings that you must do is live truthfully, which means earning money in a honest and fair manner. Donate 10% of anything you make towards uplifting society, humanity, which is why Sikhs do a lot of donation as a small community. And the third one is to take time to pray and meditate daily, because that allows you to see your ego, to see your pollution. And it's really that healing happens when we bring awareness to something. And it's when you're quiet, when you meditate, what you're really doing is pulling all the energy back into your body, because every thought is energy. So every thought you have, you're sending energy out of your body to that place, that person, or that thought. But when you take time to meditate or you practice mindfulness, you are bringing back all the energy into your body. And that's when you can hear the things that are going on inside of you, those maybe hateful thoughts or negative feelings. And by bringing your awareness to it, that's how you create healing. And the more you heal, the higher your vibration lifts, and automatically people around you also start to rise in vibration. And you move towards a more peaceful, happy life.
Yeah. So, and for both of you, again, I would ask that, you know, again, when one is in turmoil, in the eye of the storm, is it, Rabbi Shraga, is it difficult to actually slow right down and focus? Because there is that time when the vengeful wolf or the angry wolf is howling so loudly, maybe you can't screen that out. So, you know, is it a case of letting them scream all they like and then coming back to that time of prayer or inward thinking? Or is it, as Manika says, is it should it be part and parcel of every single day, so you've always got that safety valve, so to speak?
So there's a balance. Needless to say, you nurture your inner strength, you nurture your faith on a daily basis. You don't just suddenly summon it when it is the case that you are in a phase of crisis. I mean, faith is not a pill you swallow, but a muscle you flex, essentially something that is innate and intrinsic to every individual. But I think Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel, who endured the depths of hell in Auschwitz, summed it up beautifully when he came out after having witnessed the absolute horrors of humanity. And he said, you can either love God or you can hate God, but you can't ignore God. And by definition, God is always in the equation. And it may be the case that sometimes you will get angry, and God gets it, because ultimately it happened and he knows it happened. And arguably, I mean, from a Jewish perspective, from a religious perspective, he could have prevented it from happening. So if you're angry in the moment, that's okay. But just because you don't see the Big Dipper on a cloudy night doesn't mean it's not there.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. And Manika, would you what, again, I'll ask you the same question. At the moment, you know, when you're in the eye of the storm and you're maybe upset or angry or what have you, is it as easy as I mean, how do you get from that high feeling to actually bringing it all down? You've got to be very, very practiced, haven't you, in meditation, to be able to go from 200 miles an hour to zero?
I definitely struggle. I have 4-year-old twins and an 11-year-old. So getting upset, getting angry, trying to manage and be a calm mother all the time isn't possible. So even in the smallest ways, you struggle. But I think that is the opportunity to kind of understand yourself better. It's like the world giving you a chance to get to know yourself through your children and through your experiences. What I tend to do is, if the emotions are very high, I love to write it down, because, as I said, your thoughts are energy, and energy that's stuck in your body it's like a river. The parts that don't move are the parts that you can't drink water from, because those parts get bacteria, they get toxic, they get mold. Energy is like that. When the energy is stuck inside of you, it's going to get toxic. So you've got to find a way to release that energy, whether it's singing, writing, exercising, going for a jog, calling someone you trust, and spewing it out, literally just kind of vomiting it out of yourself. All of a sudden, the problem that felt gigantic, all of a sudden you realize that it's actually a really small problem most of the time, and you're very capable of dealing with it. But because that energy was stuck, it just kept growing and growing and growing, and it became something much bigger. And I'm very lucky to have people around me that are capable of seeing the worst of me, and in that moment, showing compassion. And because I do the same for them, that relationship allows us to shift and grow in healthier ways. And definitely, even my children are young, they also pray and meditate, because they see the benefits of stopping and taking 5 deep breaths before making a decision. I think understanding how the brain works is really vital, because when you're angry and you're upset, your body is dysregulated, right? So you're in fight-flight mode. You're in fight-flight mode. The prefrontal cortex, which is the critical part of the brain, it shuts down. And you're completely driven by the amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain. And that is a force. That is a force. But if you just stop and take 5 deep breaths, if you can just teach yourself to stop and take 5 deep breaths, you can actually calm that part of the brain and give a chance to the prefrontal cortex to come into play and say, hey, you know, this problem doesn't require this reaction. I'm sure I can handle it better. Yeah. So it's just teaching yourself.
Just take a time out.
Yeah.
So, and just to finish with you, Rabbi Shogert, what's your break? Do you have a break, or do you say, yeah, I'm, as you say, I'm going to get mad, angry with God, and then I'll let it dissipate in its own way? Or do you have that, you know, talisman, if you like, that go-to that can take you from 200 back down to 0?
So it's, as I said before, about having a conversation with yourself in your own mind. Very similar to the point that was made, but not necessarily getting into all the biology of it, just simply having the conversation, identifying within yourself the moment that you know you're about to say something that you shouldn't say, or you're about to get upset about something that you really need to check yourself over. And then pausing and telling yourself, you know, hey, don't do this, talk to myself, don't do this, calm down, don't say what you want to say, just take a deep breath and walk away from the situation, or then take your time. You know, little children are given time out. That's the big thing that they like to do in classrooms, time out when they might misbehave. Adults can do with a lot of time out as well, because that would actually help a lot of people in a very big way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both. And actually, you know, maybe I should just take this conversation and send it to Mr. West because we've kind of come full circle. Sometimes people just need to, just to stop and think. But I think that just finishing off where we started, I think part of the problem is that when you get to a certain level, I've always say the higher you get, the thinner the air, and I don't mean spiritually. The higher you get, the thinner the air, the more you're surrounded by people who say, yes, sir, no, sir, everything you say is right, sir. And we all need people to challenge us, be it parishioners or children. There's nothing as grounding as children to challenge us, to bring us back down to what's real. But I do thank you for a really, really stimulating, a wonderful conversation. Thank you to both of you. Rabbi Shochet there and Manika Kaur.